When you look in the Bible, there are certain passages of scriptures, really having a hard time talking today, that always seem to be, people may not know where it's at, but if you say it, they'll say, oh yeah, I know that scripture, and they'll be able to quote it, but it's not one of those that they'll be able to kind of tell you, where it's at. And so what happens is, like I was talking this morning, a lot of times when we read stories, we become they become familiar to us, and sometimes because they're so familiar to us, we kind of get locked in on what we think it says. And so all of a sudden, when somebody comes up and says something totally different, it's like, nah, that doesn't sound right. That's not what I've heard it said before, and everything. And it was like the scripture, today, forever, I was always taught a certain thing about that. And forever, I had preached that until all of a sudden I start, again, going through the scripture and looking at it and bringing it all together with different aspects of the story from place to place, and you find out, man, or what, they told you wrong, and it's like, wow. And so then you begin to see it and see it, totally different. And so and so when we begin to look at this, it's almost like, do you remember what you were going to get when you were going to get married? And it was basically, you've always seen the marriage ceremony, what it's supposed to be like, and then all of a sudden you get to that ceremony for you, and it's like, this isn't what I thought it was supposed to be. This is totally different than what I saw on TV, or this is totally different than what, somebody else. And so sometimes with the marriage ceremony to a newlywed, it's totally different to them than it was as if they attended one, or even a part of one sometimes. And so, so what ends up happening here in Proverbs chapter 3, in these verses that we're going to talk about, is really talks about the relationship between us and God. And he's going to give us some words to kind of help us understand these things, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to start out with, okay, what is the basis for our relationship with God? And then not only is it going to give us the basis, for those things, it's also going to give us some grounds and some terms. Because so many times when you start talking, for instance, like when you got saved, did anybody ever explain to you what your relationship with God was supposed to be like? Or they just tell you, okay, you're saved now, figure it out. It's like, okay, so what do I do? And sometimes the fault of us in the church sometimes is we don't really lay it out for people. And sometimes what ends up happening is somebody comes along and starts telling us some things that really gets us going or getting started in the wrong direction. And then what happens is we build on that and we continue in that direction. And so what Proverbs here is going to kind of help us in do it doing these things. Okay? So, part of it, how many of you were told that, okay, now that you've accepted Christ, do you understand that you made a commitment? Right? But how many tell you that this is a lifetime commitment? You know, a lot of times people don't understand it. They just think, okay, fine, I made a commitment, but really, what is that commitment? It's the same thing, you know, when you get married. It says, you know, a basic thing is, you know, do you promise to love, honor, and cherish this person until death do you part? For rich or for poor, for sickness and in health, you know, till death do you part. And it's like, I really need to think about that one. and what they'll do is they'll say yes, but then all of a sudden, you know, when the spats start happening, it's like, okay, it's time to separate this thing, and it's no longer you know there, and so what happens is this. If you ever teach your kids, I need you to trust me, I'm your parent, right? And they say, okay. And so you hand out your arms and you tell them jump. And it's like, really? You really want me to jump? And it's like, it's easy for me to tell you to trust me. But what really happens is there has to be a demonstration of some sort that really shows you that I can trust you. And that's what we kind of do with our kids. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start, and we'll do the first 4 verses, and then we'll come down to verse number 5. Okay. And again, remember, this is the Father talking to the Son about, he was teaching him how to handle life. And so he comes in here and he says, now my son, don't forget my teaching. You're going to be leaving here pretty soon. I want you to carry my teachings with you. But let your heart keep my commands, for they will bring you many days of full life and well-being. Never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. Tie them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and man. So he's saying, okay, here's what I want you to understand. I'm teaching you stuff. I'm giving you some teachings, and I want you to understand that don't forget this stuff. This is going to be good for you through latter days in life. So now, let's read verses 5 and 6, somebody.
Trust in the Lord with all my heart, and lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths.
Okay, so trust in the Lord in what?
With all your heart.
Yeah. With all your heart? Right? Sorry about that. And do what?
Lean not on our own understanding.
Okay, so the moment that you started your relationship with Christ, it's built on what? Faith, which is trust, right?
Trust in the Lord.
Yeah. So you're building it on faith. So you're going to trust in the Lord. Now that's what we say we're going to do, right? Here I am, Lord. I am taking my life and I'm placing it in your hands, and I'm trusting you with it. Now that's what we say, right? Agree? That's what we're saying. I'm trusting you with my life. And so what happens is, in verses 5 and 6, begins to start helping us define what that trust is supposed to be about. The very first part, trust in the Lord with what? With all your heart. Now, again, we go to this understanding that in the Bible, it talks about the heart. And this is where sometimes people get confused, because you always hear them talking, to kids. You need to give your heart to Jesus. And kids are saying, okay, you mean this little organ inside of me that's always beating? That's my heart. And you've heard somebody say that, little kid would say, okay, you're telling me I'm supposed to give my heart to God? And so how am I going to get that out of my chest? How am I going to do this? And so when we're talking about the heart, that's who we are. So when he says to trust the Lord with all your heart, what's that mean? Trust him how? Completely, entirely. And so you think about it sometimes. So here he's trying to tell me that, number one, I'm supposed to trust the Lord with all my heart. I'm supposed to trust him completely. Now, when you go to the doctor and you get a bad report, it might be a little bit hard sometimes, because all of a sudden you want to go to a doctor that knows what they're doing, a specialist maybe in the field of where you're hurting or whatever disease you've got, and you want them to give you the medicine to cure it, right?
Right.
I mean, that's who we are. But he says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Okay? And so there are some people who won't take medicine. They won't go to the doctor. We're going to trust in the Lord entirely. Well, hold on a minute. When God created opium, which he did, and some of the other things out there that they make medicine out of, he did it because he knew that there was going to be pain and other things, and that these things had some natural type of healing to the body. And so sometimes it's like, okay, where do I trust? Do I trust God with a natural type of medicine? Or do I trust man with some type of synthetic type of medicine? And sometimes we understand that sometimes when we're trusting man with the synthetic type of medicine, we get into trouble. I don't know about y'all, but I'm almost afraid sometimes to take some of this medicine. I mean, they run the ad on TV or the radio, and they've got to tell you all the side effects. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear that one of the side effects might cause death, how did you get approval to put this on the market? This stuff might kill me. Oh, I know. There are other ones. Like for instance, everybody is trying to get approval for marijuana, and saying that marijuana, there's no problem with it and all this other stuff. But yet there were studies that were done that they won't report on, that marijuana causes schizophrenic. A huge case of schizophrenic of people who are continuous users of marijuana. But they don't tell anybody that. Well, this medical marijuana and this recreational marijuana is different than this other marijuana. No, it's still marijuana. I don't care what you call it. It's still got these key ingredients in it. And if those key ingredients cause schizophrenic, why in the world do you want to call it, put it out there in the public? Money. So who are we trusting in? And what the writer of the book of Proverbs is trying to say is that you need to trust God entirely with all your heart. There should not be any part of your life that you don't put in God's trust. But sometimes we do. Then he says, not only are we to trust Him entirely, but trust in the Lord with all your heart. That is entirely. But who are we trusting in? We're trusting in the Lord with all of our heart. It doesn't say trust in your parents with all your heart. It doesn't say trust in your brothers and your sisters with all your heart. It says trust in the Lord with all your heart. So not only am I going to trust Him entirely, I'm trusting Him exclusively. I don't know about y'all, but I don't trust in the government for a lot of stuff. Number one, they don't have the means to provide me with the protection that I need. Like for instance, they're supposed to provide you with life. And you look at what the government does. They decide who lives and dies. Liberty. My liberties are being stripped of me every day. More and more of them. I don't know about y'all, but the liberties that we all had as a kid, and not the same liberties today. I could walk into any of my schools that I went to with some type of a religious paraphernalia or shirt, with a shirt with a religious saying on it, and I was okay. I do that today, and I'm kicked out of school because I'm infringing upon someone else's right. I don't know if you saw, there was a thing where this person was trying to give a speech. And this person came up here, and they held a sign up the whole time, and they asked them to, hey, could you please move and not do that? And so the person ended up taking the sign away and got a bell and just rang it the whole time. And I don't know about you used to when I was growing up, if somebody was disruptive in some type of a meeting like that, they were escorted out. Today you can't do that. They have the right to speak up. Well, where's my liberty to speak up?
You don't have any.
Exactly. If I'm on the wrong side of the agenda, I don't have the liberty. But if I'm on their side of the agenda, you can't do anything at all to me. But I can sure do something to you. So, the government is not providing me with life, liberty, or even the pursuit of happiness. We found that out this week. That supposedly everybody was on even keel to get into college. And I know that that's a scam, because there are certain scholarships that are only for certain people. And there is quota in all of these schools in order to get in. And then you look, people who had lots of money were able to get their kids who were not qualified into school, and not only not qualified to get in, they weren't even qualified to stay. But yet they were going to stay and get a degree. So the question arises is, okay, so they stayed, they don't get the grades, but they get the degree, and so what do they get? Better jobs. So my pursuit of happiness, it goes out the window because somebody got, a position that I should have had. So I'm not trusting in the government. So I've got to trust somewhere for somebody entirely. And he's saying, hey, I'm going to trust in the Lord with all my heart. With everything that I am, I'm going to trust in Him and Him alone. Okay? And then the other part of it is found in verse 6 when he says, think about Him in all your ways, and He will guide you on what? In verse number 6, what's it say?
In all their ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct their path.
Yeah. Direct what paths?
Thy path.
Huh? What'd you say?
Direct their path.
The right paths.
The right path.
So what it also says is this: not only do I basically trust Him entirely, I'm also trusting Him exclusively. But when He says trust Him in all your paths, okay, that means exhaustively. That no matter what I do and whatever energy that I expend, it should be in trusting Him. I'm not out there just beating the air. And this is where sometimes we miss this in understanding that in everything I do, I'm trusting Him. I'm not doubting Him. Okay? I may not always agree with Him because I only see part of the picture. He sees all of the picture. He knows everything. And so if He knows everything, then I need to trust Him in everything. And the words here coming from the writer is trying to say to a son, son, I need you to understand something. You're going to be leaving the house here. And when you leave the house and you go out into the world, you need to trust someone. If you remember over in chapter 2, he said, hey, you don't need to trust these people that are really strangers, with all their flattering talk and all of their things they're going to say to you, because they're going to get you in trouble. But yet, what you need to do is understand who it is that you're supposed to trust. And so, what this also gives us as parents is a guidebook in which to help our children. Also, as parents in the church, it gives us a guidebook to help the newborn baby Christian in the church. Okay? Now, so read verses 6 or 7, 8, and 9.
Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It shall be tough to the navel and marrow to the bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase.
Okay, so when you go back up to verse number 5, and we kind of started there, where he says, lean not, King James, I think, says, lean not into your own understanding.
On our own understanding.
How?
On our own understanding.
Yeah, lean not on your own understanding, but rather what ends up happening is when we lean on our own understanding, we begin to elevate ourselves. And what happens? What happens if all of a sudden I start elevating myself? What do I do with God? The higher up I elevate myself, the lower I start decreasing God. And this is where people start talking about, now I'm taking God's place. You get these people that are self-centered. They know everything, man. They got it all. They're up here, and God doesn't understand. And that's not what what ends up happening. Now, was it verse 5 or verse 6 where it said to fear the Lord?
Verse 5 says, trust in the Lord.
Okay. Verse number 7, I'm sorry, is where it's at.
Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil.
Yeah. So what happens? What happens if we don't fear the Lord? And again, we're not talking about being afraid of Him. Okay. We're talking about not allowing Him his rightful place in our life. What do we do that pushes Him out? It's a little 3-letter word. It starts with an S.
Sorry?
Oh yeah, that's the word. Not single, but sin. And so what ends up happening is this. If I'm not elevating God to His rightful place, then who am I depending on? Yeah, what I'm doing now is I'm sinning because I'm starting to do this self-reliance thing. Remember, I can tell you what, one of the biggest sections of books in any bookstore is self-help books. They've got books to help you do anything. And so, remember those woodworking books, do it yourself? They gave you all the instructions on how to build this stuff. And so they figured that if they gave you the blueprint, they gave you the plan, they gave you the book, you should be able to do it, right? Well, the problem is, if you really don't know how to hold a hammer right, what are you going to end up doing with all those nails? Huh?
Waste.
Huh?
Waste.
you're going to end up wasting a whole bunch. Because if you don't hold the hammer right, and you're not striking the head of that nail right, that nail, you may drive it in a little bit, and then all of a sudden it starts bending over. And you say, oh, well, I just need to drive another nail in there. And what you may end up happening is you may have a whole box of 16 penny nails, and you may have only got one nail driven in that board. The rest of them are all crooked. They've splintered the wood. They're not in the right location. And it's like, boy, that surely doesn't look anything like what's in that picture. It's so lopsided. It's like, really? Why? Because I thought I could do this. I thought I didn't need any help. What's that old Johnny Cash song where he worked at the auto plant?
One piece at a time.
One piece at a time. Where he ended up building him a car, one piece at a time, that he got off the assembly line over a period of like 10 years or something.
And his big lunchbox.
Yeah. I can't remember where I saw it, but somebody had a video of that car.
Yeah, they actually built one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the wildest looking car you ever saw, you know, and stuff. But that's what happens a lot of times when it says in verse 7, you know, to fear the Lord and turn away from evil. What he's saying is not to be afraid of God, but if we honestly and truly give God the place that he deserves, we're turning away from evil. It's behind us because he's in front of us. And so he's beginning, you know, to give us that. Verse number 9. What's it say there?
Honor the Lord with our substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase.
Yeah. I think we went through this between Cain and Abel. If you remember, Abel always gave God the first fruits of what he had. Okay? Cain, what he did was basically hold back the good stuff for himself and gave God the leftovers, the stuff that was sick, that you know, I'm not going to get anything out of this, you know, this animal, so I might as well just go ahead and give it to God, and I'll keep the ones that I'm going to get more out of, you know, kind of for ourselves. And so sometimes we do the same thing. We'll, you know, God, I man, you know, I love you and everything, but you don't understand. I don't have much this week. And so I'm going to have to give you just a little bit of what's left over. And a lot of times we think that that's money. And may I say something to you? Most of the time it's not money. It's us. Yeah. I'll pray to you at the end of the day with what time I have left. After I'm wore out and tired, instead of God praying to you at the beginning of the day and giving you, because honestly, what is the best part of your day? Huh?
The morning.
Yeah, I hear people. I hear people all the time say, "I'm not a morning person. I'm a night person." Well, whether you're a morning person or a night person, the first part of that day is the best part of your day. Because why? Most of the time you're well.
Rested.
I mean, most of the time I'm well rested. Okay. Now there may be some times when I have difficult nights going to sleep, or difficult staying asleep, and you get up tired. But let me ask you, but let me say this to you. If you don't get a good night's sleep and you wake up tired, when is going to be the best part of your day? As the day goes on, you're going to get more energy. I don't care how many Red Bulls you drink. You may think you got energy, but I'll tell you what, when that stuff comes out of your body and you start coming down, you're drained. You're wore out. And so when he says to give me the first, honor the Lord with your possessions, with the first produce of your entire harvest, I got to give him the first part of it, not the last part of it. Man, I'm getting tired talking too much. So look at what he begins to start saying. Okay, let's see, verse number 6 and verse number 8. When he says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, rely not on your own understanding, think about him in all the ways." And in verse number 6, if I think about him in all my ways, he's going to lead me in the what? Right paths? Right? Okay. Verse number 7, if I really don't think myself to be smart or wise, and I learn to fear the Lord and turn away from evil, then what's going to happen? It's going to be what? In verse number 8.
It shall be hushed to thy navel and marrow to the bones.
Okay, so if I trust in the Lord with all my heart and I do not rely on my understanding, and if I think about him in all my paths, and he's going all his ways, and he's going to guide me on the right paths, that's what? My spiritual aspect, right? Then if I don't consider myself to be wise, and I fear the Lord and turn away from evil, then this is going to be healing for my body and strengthening for my bones. That's going to be my physical strength, right? And then he says, then your barns will be completely filled. If I give him all this stuff, then my barns are going to be completely filled, and my vats are going to be overflow, he says, with new wine. And so what's going to happen is he's going to give me some mental, spiritual, and some physical refreshment. He's going to give me the strength that I need in all three aspects of my life. There are sometimes in our life that we get mental help, refreshment, okay? Our worries and things kind of subside, and we get closer to the Lord, but we're wore out. Physically, we're just drained. There are other times when I got plenty of energy, And spiritually, I seem to be okay, but mentally, man, I'm struggling. It's just like all these thoughts just going every which direction. So when if I begin to start doing the right formula, he helps me in all three capacities of who I am, okay? And so when we begin to learn, and we'll finish early, if you're walking down a road or driving a car, you ever driven a car along the base of maybe a mountain or a hill? What generally happens to that road? Is it straight? Most of the time, what ends up happening is, if I'm driving, and it's really neat to see this up in the air from an airplane, and you're flying over the mountains, and the hills, and you see all of these paths. They're just trying to follow the terrain, and it's winding. And what he says is that if you trust the Lord, he will make your paths straight. A straight path doesn't take as much energy as a crooked path. I could walk a straight path for a mile and go from point A to point B and get a mile, but walk that straight or walk that same path crooked, and I may only get a quarter of a mile because I'm going back and forth in different directions. And this is where he's trying to tell his son. He says, listen, if you'll listen to my advice, if you'll heed my words, if you'll trust in the Lord, if you'll fear the Lord, if you lean not on your understanding, if you listen to what he's saying to you, then what will happen is you're going to end up going from point A to point B in a lot less time with a lot less energy. And in doing so, you're going to find yourself at the end of that journey a lot more refreshed, spiritually, physically, and mentally. Instead of having to exert all of the effort of going in such a crisscross pattern way in our lives. So he begins to start telling this. And so coming with this, and this is sometimes where we fail, is we don't trust God enough to guide our paths. It's like, I don't know about y'all, but this stupid thing called Google Maps ticks me off. I'll tell it that I want to go from point A to point B, and it gives me the directions. Okay? I get to where I'm at, and I say, okay, now what I want to do is give me directions back to point A. And does it give me the same directions? No. And I'm keep trying to figure out, why are you rerouting me a different way? And especially when I look at it, and one might take me an hour and 15 minutes, and the return trip takes me an hour and 25 minutes. So why are you taking me somewhere that's going to take me 10 minutes longer to get there than it took me to get from there than it took me to get there? And I've come to figure it out. Google Maps is not God. And I don't think God has anything to do with it. sometimes I think what it is Google Maps knows what I've been buying, and so they're trying to reroute me along a road that's going to take me by some places that's going to sell something that I've been buying. I don't know, but I haven't been able to figure that out. But let me say this to you. God says, if you will trust me, I will take you the most direct route. It will be straight. And so, as we were talking, this morning, where Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee over to the spot where he went, and then talked to one person and led that one person to the Lord to trust in him. And then all of a sudden, there's a revival that breaks out in that place. When Jesus comes back, what had happened if Jesus had told that guy, okay, here's what I need you to do. I need you to get in the boat with me and come on back over to the other side, sit with me for the next 30 days, and I'll teach you everything you need to know about telling people what happened to you, and then you go back home. And I'll come back, and by the way, here's what I'm going to do. I'll take you back with me, because I'm going to go back over there in 30 days to that same area, and I'll take you with me, and we'll go ahead, and I'll let you do whatever it is that I've taught you how to do. There would have been a lot of lost time in that 30 days. But Jesus knew exactly what he was doing. With the right person, when the guy said, can I go with you? He says, no, you need to stay here. And you need to tell them what I've done. And you think about it.
Missionary that was determined, that Jesus said, stay where you're at.
That's right. Don't come over here. And sometimes we talk about this a lot. Sometimes we fail to realize that our mission work is right where we're at sometimes. He hasn't called everybody to go across the sea with him.
Amen.
There are sometimes he tells you, I've reached you here, you stay right where you're at. Because why? You know the people. You know what they need. And other than that, they know you. I mean, think about it for a minute. Because I got a couple minutes before they come back.
Yeah.
The place where he was at, where he resided, was a cemetery. A lot of people go to a cemetery to visit their loved ones that have died. So you think about it. The Bible doesn't tell us how long that guy had been in that cemetery. But I'm thinking that by the story and the chains and the scratches and everything that he had on him, he'd been there for a while.
Yeah.
So let's just say he's been there for 3 months. How many people, because you got to understand, this is a place of 10 cities in this surrounding area of this cemetery. And all these people that have come into that cemetery, and how many of them, and I'll guarantee you that probably everybody that came into that cemetery ran into that guy. Why? Because he was making some noise. Not just in the sounds that he was making, but from the chains. And I don't know about y'all, but walking through a cemetery and hearing chains, that's not a good sound. When you get all of this superstition, you know, that's abounding. And all these people that come into this guy and saw this guy running around in the cemetery among the tombstones, and then all of a sudden they come back another day to visit their loved ones, And here's this guy sitting there with clothes on in his right mind, and they look at him and think, I've seen you somewhere before. Yeah? Remember when you came to visit your Aunt Sally? Or your mom and your dad? Remember that guy that was running around over here, making all those noises, and that you were afraid of? Oh, that was me. Well, what happened? Oh, well, let me tell you my story. I can't tell you how many times that guy probably was able to repeat that story, so that when Jesus came back, the hearts of the people were ready to receive the message that Jesus was going to tell them that day. And this is where God's saying, trust me. If you trust me, I'll make your path straight, and I'll do everything that you need.
Hello, this is Pastor Chuck Cotton from Calvary Baptist Church. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for taking the time out to either listen to our sermon or to watch it on video. We are grateful that you've actually taken the time, and hope and pray that it has been a blessing to you as it was to us as we delivered it to our congregation. We ask if you have any questions whatsoever that you email us at pastorchuck@calvarybaptistmiddletown.org, or you could come in and give us a phone call, if you would please, at area code 513-423-7251. I'd like to take this opportunity to also invite you to come to our church and visit us, if you would please. We actually have small groups on Sunday morning starting at 9:30 with our morning worship. Prior to our morning small groups, we also provide donuts with coffee, milk, orange juice, a time for fellowship, get to know each other, have a good time before we actually break out into our small groups for Sunday. Our worship services are uplifting, they're fast moving, and everything in our service is just a fast pace. But we do take time every once in a while to slow down as we feel the Holy Spirit moving, and we never want to hinder it in any way. We also have on Sunday evening, and during the school year, we have Awana, and Awana starts with the Puggles, actually from age 2 all the way up through high school. And during that period of time, we also have a worship service. Both of these start at 6 o'clock and end at 7:30. Our Wednesday night, we have a Bible study, which starts at 7. We generally finish about 8:15. We would love for you to come and visit with us. Don't have to dress up, just come as you are, because to us, it doesn't matter. You're a child of God, a creation of His, and so to us, you're important to everything that we do. Our motto here is building the kingdom one life at a time, and we hope that we have a chance to visit with you, get to know you as you get to know us. So thank you, and may God bless you.